All right, we might get this session started. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special election update for Farmers for Climate Action's Quiet Majority election campaign. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. My name is Caleb Connor, and I'm the Senior Manager of Policy and Programs on the Farmers for Climate Action team. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from which we're all dialing in from today. Farmers for Climate Action and myself, we pay respects to elders past and present and recognise their ongoing connection to country. A quick word before we begin as well. We are recording this as a webinar to use for sharing with members later. So what that means is that we're in webinar mode, and that means we won't be able to actually hear or see you, but we do know that you are there. And if you have comments or questions, you can use the chat or the Q&A function in Zoom, and we will get to those as we move along. So for those of you who don't know about us, though we're very sure you do, Farmers for Climate Action is a movement of farmers for farmers. We're Australia's only farmer-led organisation advocating for strong climate action both on and off the farm. At the latest count, we have over 8,400 members, farmer members, and more than 80,000 community supporters, all committed to reducing emissions across the economy this decade. So we've said it before, this year is a critical one. The election campaign is well underway, and the decisions made in 2025 are going to shape Australia's climate policy trajectory and the sustainable future for agriculture. So we are pushing harder than ever to make sure that our farmers' voices are heard loud and clear. Today's webinar is all about providing an update on some of the most relevant election action and equipping you with the supporting tools and the resources that you need to take action. So in a moment, I'm going to hand over to the Farmers for Climate Action CEO, Natalie Collard, and Natalie will speak to a huge moment that has already taken place this election campaign and what we are doing to keep pushing. I'll then introduce another colleague, Les White, to provide his analysis of all of the election action. Finally, we'll present a short masterclass in engaging with the media and how you can support this campaign by writing a letter to the editor. So before we kick off, I'll take a moment now to encourage all of you to visit our Farming Forever National Summit page on the Farmers for Climate Action website. The Farming Forever National Summit is taking place on the 1st and 2nd of September, and it celebrates the leadership of Australia's farmers in driving climate action. We are so excited about this event. It's going to bring together farmers, industry leaders, and key stakeholders to collaborate, to innovate, and shape the future of sustainable farming in Australia. So join us to be part of this movement, and you can access the ticket page through the Farmers for Climate Action website. So on the call today, we have myself. We also have my colleagues, Natalie Collard, the CEO of Farmers for Climate Action, and Les White, who is a strategy and politics advisor to our team. Natalie, I'm going to hand over to you now to run our attendees through the big announcement for farmers and related to batteries from previous weeks.
Terrific. Thank you, Caleb. Really appreciate your intro and very excited about the summit. It's wonderful to be with you all this Friday and just really thinking about you all and hoping that those that are desperate for that autumn break get the rain that you're looking for, and those that are combating floods get the dryness that you're looking for, and everything in between. I hope the Easter gods look after you. I'm really thrilled to share with you today some exciting news. Our number one election ask, which was battery support for farmers, has been pledged as a commitment by the federal government in their major election promise. I'm sure none of you missed it. And it's a real testament to the power of our collective voice and our farmer movement. But before I dive into the details, I wanted to take a quick step back and just recap that, as you know, we've been laser focused on three key policy asks this election. The first one is, of course, delivering financial support for on-farm batteries, because storage is the missing piece for so many farmers ready to take control of your energy costs. Number two is letting farmers use the clean energy they generate and store across their entire property, even across multiple titles. And thirdly, of course, upgrading rural poles and wires to unlock reliable, future-proof energy for regional Australia. These aren't just nice to haves, they're practical, sensible policies that would slash input costs, build resilience, and keep farmers at the forefront of the energy transition. We recognise that two of these actually require state and federal governments to work together, which is easier said than done in Australia today, we know that, but they're otherwise budget neutral, long-term commitments that the federal government can and should commit to, whichever party forms government. So that's why we're asking the Coalition and the ALP, as well as independents, to back us on those three asks. Now to the breakthrough. The federal government has pledged to wipe a third of the cost of installed batteries for small businesses, covering systems between 50 and 100 kilowatt hours, which, as you know, is the sweet spot for many farming operations. Subsidies, not loans, because we know that these financial incentives drive uptake, and it's happening already through the Small-Scale Renewable Energy Scheme, a proven model that's been delivering cut-price solar for 15 years. We did see this coming, and that's because regional Australia has been shouting out for batteries loud and clear. Our open letter is making the case, and batteries are critical infrastructure for farmers. We called for urgent support to lower energy costs, not just for farmers, but to unlock the potential of on-farm renewables, and it future-proofs regional communities. The response to our open letter has been overwhelming, with a rallying of almost 2,000 signatures so far, and we're going to be asking your help today to boost that. So it says on the slides 1,000 plus, it's actually nearly 2,000 at the time of presenting this information to you today. So I do want to share with you that when we first reached out to you with the link for our open letter, the surge of responses was so strong, you did actually crash our website for a few hours. So let's keep sharing it. Let's keep getting those signatures signed on so that we can ask the Coalition to match this pledge. It's a grassroots movement that is pretty unstoppable if we're all doing our bit and taking a moment to share it. And let's talk about why this matters. Right now, a farm battery typically takes 10 years to pay it for itself through energy savings. So that's a 10-year ROI. But with this subsidy, it slashes the upfront costs by $370 per kilowatt hour, halving that payback time. 5 years of payback is an absolute game changer, and remembering these costs are coming down every day. We have heard about so many farmers about the impact that batteries are having on their farm. And one example is actually you can find in a webinar that we hosted about the future of on-farm power, where a dairy farmer from New South Wales shared that since installing their battery system, their energy costs have fallen by 70 to 80%. The battery system has allowed them to better manage and utilise their entire on-farm energy system, meaning the farmer had so much less worries about blackouts. And what they told us was they were getting more sleep. This is what energy resilience looks like, and it's why we're still pushing hard to lock in that bipartisan support. This pledge by the ALP, a win by Farmers for Climate Action, proves something very powerful. That when farmers speak with one voice, decision makers listen. But we're not done yet. Our team right now is contacting every single Coalition frontbencher and backbencher because this policy is too critical to be partisan. We're pushing them to match, or better yet, beat Labor's commitment. Batteries should not be a political football. They're an economic, energy, and environmental no-brainer. And this is where you come in. Can you help us turn this promise into reality and keep the pressure on? Send a letter to your MP. We've made it easy with templates you'll find on our website. There's links in the chat, so you can just click and share, and please share it with your networks. Personalize it with a couple of sentences that connect them to your story about why batteries would make a difference on your farm. amplify our campaign, share it on your social media, put it out to your friends and networks. Remember, every adult in your household can sign the open letter. That makes a difference. And share your story through a letter to the editor. I'm going to hand over in a moment to my colleague, Les White, who will talk you through how simple and impactful a letter to your local paper can be. And when we're talking about a letter, we're talking about 100 to 200 words. It's 5 sentences or more. It's really not much, but the difference it makes is immense. The election's coming on the 3rd of May, so we've got a really narrow window to lock in that bipartisan support and make sure every politician, no matter what party, hears the same message. Farmers need batteries and we need them now. And to every farmer that signed our letter, shared your story or contacted your MP, thank you so much. This achievement is yours, and let's keep charging ahead. Over to you, Les.
Just a moment while Les finds the mute button.
Oh, sorry, guys. I'd muted myself, as Caleb said. Just wanted to give you guys an update on how the election campaign's going. Obviously, I assume you can probably see me on your screen. I did just want to share screen for a minute just to show you how things are kicking off. There is a few polls kicking around at the moment. This website, the Poll Bludger, usually aggregates them. I think you can probably see it now. So you can see there, you know, late 2023, obviously, Labor was still in front. Generally, there was a crossover sort of late 2023, and Coalition's been in ascendancy for kind of 12 months or so, pretty comprehensively. But you can see there, as we get to 2025, it tightens up completely again. And now Labor seem to be pulling in front on most measures. And so that, as I said, that Poll Bludger information, that's an aggregate of all the different polls that you see, some that you see in the media and some that you don't. And so that's sort of culminated with some quite strong results that the government got in the last few days. At the start of last week, I think the Resolve poll in the Fairfax papers had Labor sort of up 53.5 to 46.5. I think that poll jumps around a lot, and I don't actually think that is the case, but I do think that Labor is in front now, probably 51 to 49 or something like that. So I'll probably just run through a few seats just to give you guys a bit of a flavour for it. But in most of the models that you could run a couple of months ago, people were sort of debating how many seats Dutton might win. You know, whether it might be 8 or 13, and you know, was not that long ago. It was only a couple of months ago. People were talking about a potential majority government for the coalition, which would have required, you know, Dutton and Littleproud to have won, you know, 17 seats or something like that. It definitely doesn't look like that's going to be the case now. As the campaign's gone on, Albanese's numbers have gotten stronger and Dutton's have gotten weaker. And so there's been a few issues that have been at play there. You know, one last night, obviously national security, with Dutton having to say that he'd gotten it wrong, to do with the Russians putting military equipment in Indonesia, basically. So some of the seats that are looking interesting, Cowper up on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, traditionally a national seat, has been for a really, really, really long time. That one looks really close. Hard to say which way it'll go. Over in Calare, where Andrew Gee, the ex-Nationals, running as an independent. Again, that looks close. I actually think the Nationals will probably take that one, but it'll be a close contest. And then the other one everyone seems to be talking about is Wannon down in Victoria. On the latest numbers out today, it looks like that Dan Tehan, the Liberal, probably might hold that one. But yeah, there's been some really big contests across regional Australia, mostly between independents and incumbent coalition MPs. Some of the stuff that's going on in the cities, you know, the coalition strategy really was to try and target the suburbs, particularly with cost of living issues. That doesn't seem to have come off for them at the moment. Yeah, I mean, they're gaining seats, I think, in the suburbs, but not enough to get anywhere near winning government. In the energy space, obviously, it's the policies are quite different from those major parties. So obviously Labor going with that mix of 82% renewables, what they're aiming for by 2030, and then they would use gas, battery storage, pumped hydro, and there's still actually a lot of coal in the system in 2030. There's a lot. So it's actually a mix of sort of 5 different technologies from them. And then you've got the coalition obviously pledging that they'll aim for nuclear. And I think the quote is that they'll sweat coal. And what they mean by that is they'll keep running coal for longer until nuclear gets built. Obviously, there's a lot of debate around how long building nuclear would take, but I'm very confident to tell you that it is a bloody long time. So yeah, so those policies are quite different, and you know how that plays out in city seats and in seats that are currently held by independents in the cities. So what a lot of people call the teals. You know how those energy policies play out there is really interesting. People are not voting on energy policy. Most of them are not. So it's a really small percentage. Most people are voting on cost of living issues and stuff like that. But there's still plenty of seats across Sydney and Melbourne where people are not affected really by grocery prices or petrol prices. There's a lot where the median income is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so that's not many seats, but it's enough. And in those seats, energy policy really does matter. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for us. As Nat said, we've already had that massive win with the battery policy from the current government. I think we're asking for a little more, but a third off the cost of a battery that's a good kickstart. Especially the size of it was what really impressed us. So with farmers being able to get, you know, batteries of, you know, at least 50 kilowatt hours up to 100, that's a big battery. That's, you know, that's a big battery by normal standards. I don't think it's probably quite enough to run a dairy farm off. I'm not saying that, but it's handy, right? For most guys. I probably, if that's enough on politics, I'll probably move on to the letter writing thing, if that's okay with everyone.
There is a question in the chat, Les, which is,
sure.
do you expect a bounce to Labor following Dutton's comments around climate change last night? And thanks, Jim Mewburn, for your question.
Yeah, so I don't think there'll be a bounce. That's a great question though. So look, some people think that there would be a bounce. That would mean that there's people thinking about voting for Dutton that were thinking about voting for Dutton on the idea that he was quite strong on climate. And that those people have learned last night that maybe he's not quite as strong on climate as they thought. You can probably tell from the way I've described that I don't think that's the case. I don't think that people who are voting on climate were going to vote for Peter Dutton until last night. You know, I think that to state some facts, just on the polling I see, so I see endless amounts of polling and focus groups as part of my job. I suspect I've seen at least 12 sets of polling, particularly on energy policy in the last 3 months. Look, the fact is that most people that are concerned about climate change don't support the nuclear policy. The fact is that policy has become far less popular in recent weeks. And the fact is also we saw some polling released by Realliance just a week or so ago showing that support in a lot of those potential host sites is sort of in the 20s. And ranges up to the early 30s to about 32 in Hunter, but as low as 22 in the central west of New South Wales. So in terms of that nuclear policy cutting through as a climate policy, I just don't think that it has. You know, some people might think it's sensible, but it's not because they're voting on climate as their number one issue. Yeah. I can't actually see the chat. Are there more questions there that we should deal with or not?
No, there's not another question there, Les, but I am interested in your view on, aside from the other issues that we've outlined in our election asks, what other issues or points do you see will be relevant for the remainder of the election that are related to agriculture and climate action?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I would hope that we would see some agriculture announcements in the next week or so. Look, the fact is we don't generally get enough agriculture announcements during a campaign from either side of politics. They focus on what they think will win them the most seats. And, you know, this is a classic example. This election is cost of living. And so political parties don't want to be dragged off message. They want to be repeating their message again and again. And so this election, they want to be talking about cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. And so you might have seen in some of our Farmers for Climate Action communication, we're trying to make farming relevant to cost of living because everyone on this call knows that it is. you know, food production is such an essential component of cost of living and feeds into every other sector, like farming feeds into every other sector. I really hope that we get an announcement in the next couple of weeks. There's normally an agriculture leaders debate. I note that David Littleproud, the leader of the Nationals, is at the Australian Press Club next Thursday. I have no inside information on this, but typically when you appear at the press club, a politician makes an announcement. So I would really hope that we get something in the agriculture space there. I'm interested to see what Labor comes up with in the agriculture space as well. We know that they're pretty strong on the climate stuff, but it'd be good to see some really targeted farm assistance as well. That is one reason I've got to say that I do think the battery announcement was good, because there's a risk when a government makes an announcement during a cost of living election that they forget about farmers and they just focus on households. So I did think that getting them to subsidise batteries up to that quite big size was a massive win for farmers and small businesses, because it could have been overlooked quite easily. But yeah, I really hope that the coalition comes out with a battery policy as well, because then we'll have bipartisan support locked in. Seems like a bit of a no-brainer to me. But yeah, the fact is we haven't had enough agriculture announcements during the campaign so far, and I really hope we get them in the next week and a half or week.
And we're delighted that you'll be on the ground with DLP, Mr. Littleproud, when he's at the press club, hopefully ready and waiting to celebrate a positive announcement on batteries if we can secure that.
Yeah, I'll be there next week. So, but yeah, I'll have to check, but it'd be good to see when Julie Collins is speaking as well, to see what those guys have got for us.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Les. So the following section of our webinar is on engaging with media and how impactful it is to get in touch with your local paper through a letter to the editor.
Yeah, and so I think this is just the easiest thing that most Farmers for Climate Action members can do, you know. So letters to the editor, you typically want to keep them to 150 words because that's the length at which they get printed. If you go over that, they tend to not get printed. If you can usually do that in 6 sentences, I reckon. And you usually want to finish with a question is probably my main tip. So it seems to be a fact in all the psychological studies that questions are actually far more persuasive than statements. And so when you make a statement to somebody, they don't need to open their mind. They just hear it as your opinion. When you ask a question, it asks the person to open their mind and to search for evidence or search for an answer. And so, you might finish with a question like, which parties are offering climate conscious farmers good policies at this election, or what policies have you seen that would help farmers to reduce emissions on farm during this election campaign? So just asking people to search their own mind is usually a much smarter way of getting them to think about that topic. So yeah, normally key points are you don't want to attack anyone. You never want to be condescending. You don't want to sledge anyone else. You can disagree with a person through partial agreement. So that's what I would normally do. I would normally start by saying, I notice that you believe in preserving farmland. I believe in preserving farmland too. And that's why I believe in X. So in our case, often when we write a letter to the editor at Farmers for Climate Action, we do start with that, because some of the valid concerns we hear from farmers and other people are, are renewables tearing up farmland? And so what they're really worried about is farmland, is preserving farmland. And so we would typically say, look, we want to conserve farmland too. That's what we're all about. And that's why we think for the small amount of people that do get to do it, those clean energy projects are absolutely fantastic, because renewables make that farm more profitable. Renewables make the farmland more profitable and more productive in lots of cases. I'm sure that you guys might be aware of farmers like Tony Inder and Tom Warren, New South Wales sheep farmers that have both seen wool yield increases, really good wool yield increases. We're talking 20% from the sheep that are grazing under the solar panels. So not only have they got that drought-proof income from the solar panels, that rent, but also their on-farm production has actually gone up. And that's the kind of result we want to see at Farmers for Climate Action. We want to see that productivity and the profitability of that land go up. Yeah, so obviously agreeing with the premise of what the person actually is talking about, and then explaining why we think you can increase farm productivity while you also increase clean energy production. It's a win-win. So I would normally start with partial agreement, keep it simple, keep it to 5 or 6 sentences, keep it to 150 words. And if you can finish with a question, so in that particular example, maybe the question would be something like, how many farmers stand to profit or increase their productivity from taking on clean energy projects? Because we know that it pays really good money. We know that the typical offering now is about $40,000 per wind turbine per year in rent, or it's about $1,500 a year per hectare of solar panels. And you can run your sheep under the solar panels. You can run cattle and sheep and cropping, as a couple of our members do around wind turbines. So just sort of wrapping that up, starting with the partial agreement, having some substantive points in the middle, usually a couple of facts and stats, and then finishing with that question that opens the reader's mind, and making sure that you're respectful to all points of view of all times, because not everyone needs to agree with us, and that's great. That's fantastic, and we respect their point of view.
Les, can I ask, on the topic of batteries, what are some good ways to start the letter that, to your point, identify areas that we have in common that are relevant to batteries in this case?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that obviously pointing out, so I would probably link that to cost of living if you're writing it during this election campaign, because we know that's what's running in the media. We know that's what's driving clicks, and we know that's what the politicians are taking notice of. So I'd probably be pointing out that if farmers are able to store the energy that they're making on their own farm, this reduces farmers' input costs. This reduces farmers' energy bills. And then I would probably say that we know that keeping farmers' input costs down is an important part of keeping families farming, and it's an important part of our food supply. I'd probably try and link it to checkout price, but I wouldn't try and, I wouldn't want to, obviously my mum and dad are farmers, I wouldn't want to make it any harder by trying to suggest that keeping energy costs down will see food prices come down, because the fact is I don't think food prices will come down. But what it obviously does do is it reduces the cost of production.
Sure. Any other words of wisdom on either writing a letter to the editor or maybe even engaging with the media more broadly? And I'd open that one up to Natalie as well, if anything comes to mind.
Yeah, look, I think if you've got media opportunities lined up, you can, especially if it's a big one, you can probably contact Farmers for Climate Action and just have a chat to me. I'm very happy to prepare people for interviews. I mean, my main tip for doing media interviews is you've got to write yourself a cheat sheet, and you want to have that cheat sheet in front of you. So if this was an interview right now, if I was on the television right now via Zoom, because a lot of TV interviews are via Zoom now, there's no reason I couldn't have an A4 sheet of paper on the wall, just blue tacked behind me, or sitting up just near the screen. And you have your 3 key points on it, the things that you want to repeat multiple times. And then under that, you have a couple of useful facts and stats that you can just reel off, that'll make you sound very smart. And then under that, I would normally just have a couple of what I call pivots, which is you think of the toughest question you might be asked, and you write an answer to it that acknowledges and addresses the question, and then goes back to your 3 key messages up the top. So an example I often use is you can get back to your key message from anything. So if my key message is that clean energy makes farmland more profitable, and you ask me about the color of the sky, I just say, well, look, the sky's blue, and that's important. It's an important question for a lot of people. What's really important for farmers is that we get that drought-proof income and we make our property more profitable, and we can do that by adding clean energy rent to our traditional farm income. So you address the question first, and then you pivot across back to your topic. You do have to actually answer the question. I do want to stress that. Don't dodge it. Be upfront and answer it, and then move back to your ground. So yeah, but writing out one of those, writing it by hand is really effective. It's only going to take you 10 minutes, but it'll increase. I seriously think it'll make you twice as good in that interview. Most people get nervous during an interview with major media. It happens to everyone. And when you get nervous, cortisol enters your brain and it stops you from thinking. That's cortisol's job. It puts you into fight or flight. And so if that moment happens to you, you've got those words right in front of you that you've written out before, and you can just go straight off that page. So it really does improve you.
And I just want to, we've got a great demonstration of Les's point. Jim's popped a comment in the chat. So I'm going to have a go at topping and tailing it so that it becomes a letter to the editor. So if I said something like, there's a lot of discussion about tariffs right now. Aussie farmers can't control the tariffs that other countries apply. But what we do know is that gaining an assured income from a renewables project adds additional dollars to invest in capital improvements on farm, and we're not just relying on seasonal returns or market fluctuations from other countries. That's why I'm calling on the government to back on-farm batteries.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. I want to emphasise what Les has said. There is nothing in our suite of election actions that should take you more than 10 minutes. It's stopping, thinking, what am I, 4 sentences, and those 4 sentences can become topped and tailed to a letter to the editor, and our website will help you find where to do it, and you'll know your local paper. Their website will give you the email address or web form to just pop those sentences in as your letter to the editor. That can become an email to your MP. It can also be a social post if you like, and feel free to tag us, or it could be a phone call and a media comment as well. So it's something where you do it once and it works well. I also want to say that myself and the team will have open in our website, everyone that would have copied the QR code or taken down the link, if you're operating off your phone, you will see that you can have it open and you can actually get people to sign that open letter there and then. Easter catch-ups with family are great for lots of reasons. They're also great for getting signatures onto open letters, I found. So it's really exciting. And Farmers for Climate Action is working on another short report right now, which is the cost of climate at the checkout. So we won't be stopping this work after the election. Rest assured, we will be fighting for you and for on-farm improvements and support for the great work you're doing every step of the way. Back to you, Caleb and Les.
So great. So we're happy to take any other questions that come through. Otherwise, we can look to wrap up the session today. But I think I do want to emphasize some of the points that Nat and Les have raised today that Farmers for Climate Action have published on our website, what we're calling the guide under our Quiet Majority Election Campaign page. That guide has all kinds of resources, from signing the open letter, as Natalie's pointed out. It has templates for emailing your MP, for writing a letter to the editor, for buying a Farmgate sign. Everything you need is on the website. So that's a really, really great resource. Unless there aren't any other questions that come through, I might move to wrapping us up today. I think I really want to thank everyone for registering and for coming along to this session. We're so grateful for everybody's enthusiasm and commitment to this campaign. And I think to recap on some of the key points, we know that the announcement from the federal government about battery support was a huge win for farmers, but bipartisan support is now what we all need to focus on and push for. You can support this campaign through a letter to the editor, and by implementing some of the wisdom that Les and Natalie shared, identify shared values, and with a question, keep it really short, just like Nat demonstrated on the fly before, which was incredible, and that all the resources for you to do this are on our website. So that is all there for you. Don't forget to check out the guide. Please also check out the Farmers for Climate Action Farming Forever National Summit. And if you have any questions or need support, you're talking to the media, you need somebody to proofread your letter, please get in touch with us. We absolutely live for supporting our members with this kind of outreach. It means so much. So yeah, do not hesitate to reach out to us. So thank you again. We look forward to working with you to advocate on these enormous priorities this election, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks.
Hey, well done, Caleb. Amazing, Les. Just amazing.